This week on To the Contrary.
First, the Me Too movement versus the U.S. Labor Secretary. Then, should the U.S. women's soccer team be paid more than the men's team? Last, the old girl guard versus the new girl guard in Congress.
Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, Labor Secretary Alex Acosta will resign. So,
has the Me Too movement made progress dismantling one of the worst forms of female discrimination, sex trafficking of young girls? Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta brokered an astoundingly weak, some would say cruel to the victims, punishment a decade ago with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein when Acosta was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Acosta has refused to apologize to the victims, saying Epstein might have served no jail time but for the plea deal. In Acosta's words, quote, "We live in a very different world today. Today's world treats victims very, very differently," end quote. Epstein served 13 months in jail but was allowed to be chauffeured to and from his office to work 6 days per week. Epstein was recently arrested on federal sex trafficking charges in New York.
So, Congresswoman Norton, is Acosta's resignation due to moral pressure or political pressure?
Bonnie, tried public opinion. Trump, who's running for re-election, could not have survived this, especially given his own record with women and sexual harassment.
It's a combination of moral and political. He's a failed prosecutor, and he knows it's going to come back and haunt him, as well as this administration.
I think that what we've seen, clearly he needed to go. He needed to pay a price that he hadn't paid. The Senate Republicans should have caught this in the vetting process before they confirmed him as Labor Secretary, and I'm disappointed, infuriated that they didn't, but it's one of the many things they haven't. So, but the president, you know, he's trying to deflect the attention from his own behavior, so he made Acosta resign.
Unfortunately, sex crimes are one of the hardest crimes to prosecute, and everybody knows it. And unfortunately, this has been an issue ever since the 90s when President Clinton was the first sexual predator that I actually knew when we were growing up. So this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I want to get back to your point, Hilary. I am so sick of seeing these guys get appointed and then it comes out that they lied or they have something that the FBI missed in their background that's heinous, a la Kavanaugh, a la this guy, a la how many others. When is there, and especially to you, Congresswoman, when is there going to be a law that if a guy or woman lies during cabinet or federal judge confirmation hearings, they get booted?
You know, Bonnie, this is malpractice on the part of the FBI. Any president, any appointing official should have been warned. This is in this man's background. Proceed at your own risk. Maybe they did warn. Maybe he proceeded in any case. Because even if, and I can give you some reasons why, in fact, this might have not seemed as bad as it did, it always would have had that appearance for whoever appointed him. So the risk was the president's to take. Perhaps he didn't know it. But it's certainly coming back to haunt him now, and he had enough sense to get rid of.
But to your
but Liz Matory, welcome to the panel for the first time.
Thank you.
Ran for Congress as a Republican from Maryland.
Yep.
Your thoughts? What do you think about? What does the Christian right think about allowing somebody who it came out afterwards did something either heinous or criminal, staying in a very important government job?
Okay, so wait, I'm confused. Did Acosta do this crime, or is it someone else? Because I feel like
he was a prosecutor who gave a sweetheart deal to Epstein, including 13 months in jail and being chauffeured back and forth to your office 6 days a week.
Right. So I looked. The governor at that time was Christie. So I'm trying to figure out who and what everybody knew. If you all know D.C.
Oh, wait a second. Christie was governor in New Jersey.
Christ. Charlie Crist. Sorry.
Who was a Republican.
Yeah, Crist. Yeah,
Okay.
Republican, now independent. Apologize. Everyone in that area, on the upper echelon of society, knows everyone. Everyone in Washington knows. Everybody in Miami. Everyone knew what this man was doing and has known for 25 years. If anything, again, going back to criminal prosecution, prosecuting issues are never black and white. Public opinion loves to think that they're this way. There might have been a lot of issues. There was a lot of back and forth in his office, and I do believe there was some pressure from the from the upper echelons. To say that it's Trump and his backstory about his affinity to women, beautiful women, is an affront to all the different people to this day who are sex trafficked from the age of 5 all the way up to 25. Maryland is the #4 state of sex trafficking. Why aren't we focusing on that? Why are we talking about Acosta?
Okay, I just want to point out there are people who would never describe Trump's problems with women as an affinity for beautiful women.
I think
but anyway.
These women weren't just young women. I mean, they weren't just underage. Sorry, they were really young. And I'm really worried about how these victims were treated.
This was disgusting.
This is not a partisan issue.
Let's
This
not
should
call
not be.
these people underage women.
Yeah,
They
we
were
shouldn't. We should
girls.
call them
They were
absolute
children, right?
Yes.
And so this kind of notion that there's something and by the way, I let it slide before, but it's connected. The idea that you're going to connect Bill Clinton to, Jeffrey Epstein's crimes is nauseating. These are children, and people did get through it. Acosta was in a position of power as the prosecutor to recommend a tougher sentence for a judge to approve. Maybe it was a conspiracy of pressure on him, maybe it wasn't, but to defend it is outrageous. And I think what we've seen with this president is that we just don't. They don't vet for these things. We just had it with the, Secretary of Defense and Shanahan and a domestic violence problem. I mean, we've seen this over and over again that the president has problems with appointees, discovers the problem and pushes them away to deflect attention from his own troubles.
But this is so much bigger than Acosta.
He takes no responsibility for his own
This is so much bigger.
troubles.
This is about the elite hiding the misdeeds and bad actions of the elite.
I
and I
agree
think
with
there are a lot of younger women. Thank God the Me Too movement has helped these women speak out, and these reporters in Miami, had they not done their job, Jeffrey Epstein wouldn't be in shackles today. So,
I agree with that.
I mean, but one thing is true. I've been really upset by how the right is responding to this. But one thing is true. Bill Clinton knew Jeffrey Epstein. There have been credible reports saying they spent time together. I'm worried about that, too. This is about upscale men in the higher echelons of society covering up each other's misdeeds. That's disgusting.
Okay, speaking of Me Too, tell the audience your role in the Me Too movement.
Oh, well, I'm a co-founder of the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund.
Thank you.
But I don't think that this is a challenge to Me Too. I think Rima's right. This is
Not a challenge.
Essentially
Is it a victory?
I think it is a victory in that for these women, as opposed to for society, because what we saw over the last few weeks is these now they are young women, right? Now they are, 18, 19, 20, and they are speaking up. And I do think that they have felt courage to do that because other women have spoken up as a survivor as well.
Just to put a lawyer's plate on this, what did he mean? What's the real defense here? Remember, he focused on the difficulty of getting 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds to testify and then be cross-examined. So, I take that for what it's worth, but their lawyers have responded that they first of all, this deal was hidden from them,
Yes.
Which it seems to me is damning. And no one said, are there any of these girls who are willing to be cross-examined? We do have to this is a good legal system we have. You can't just accuse somebody. But this would have required very, very careful work if you really wanted to prosecute him. And I think you make the point. If you really wanted to prosecute him, why add to the deal by saying 6 days a week you get to go to your office?
But I think the other point Rima made quickly is important, which is this is a significant, pervasive problem, sex trafficking of women, right?
Of both parties
Right.
and all races.
And boys
so,
too.
but it's not bad that we're focusing on Jeffrey Epstein, because what we've done is we've woken the world up in a way, same way, Harvey Weinstein woke up many people to sexual harassment on the job. That when you topple a man of power, other men get a little more fearful and women feel a little more empowered, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, last word.
Well, the next group that we need to focus on are partners of law firms who are women, who are basically making young associates their sex slaves in order to get, that's something that there's a lot of sexual predation.
Remind me of where this
right
is
here
coming
in
from.
DC, absolutely.
No. What are you basing that on? I haven't heard.
Yeah, there are a lot of lawsuits that are being stifled in the District of Columbia. Again, that's what irks us so much, is that this is an issue, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's New York, any seat of power. People in DC have, binders full of issues that they use to control politicians throughout their history.
If you have credible stories of that kind of sexual harassment, give them to me, because I have reporters up the kazoo looking to do exposés.
And I think it's journalists in the movement.
We'll do it too.
We can't be in the business of sort of fretting. We have to be in the business of exposing.
All right, please let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter @BonnieOrbay or @ToTheContrary. From trafficking to the sports and politics of equal pay.
Have the USA Women's Soccer 4-time World Cup winning team made the issue of equal pay passé while setting the trend for talk of better pay for women who outshine male counterparts? Some say the answer to that is a resounding yes. This week, the team was given a ticker tape parade through Manhattan and accepted an invitation to visit Capitol Hill offered by the leading Senate and House Democrats. 28 team members are suing the U.S. Soccer Federation for discrimination. They say they're paid less for what is substantially equal work when compared with the men's team. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer wants the Republican Majority Leader to bring to the floor a bill making it easier for women to get equal pay at work. And the hope is the bill will pass when the team is in D.C.
So is there going to be a bill? Is Mitch McConnell going to let a bill get to the floor that helps women get equal pay?
He's not, because he's always with the group of women on the right that say this isn't about equal pay. There's actually no discrepancy in how women are paid in the workforce. That's what the right always leads with. So I don't think Leader McConnell would do that. And I think.
Well, what about the snub? I mean, I thought the reason would be because these young women are coming to visit at the Democrats' invitation to go to Capitol Hill, as opposed to the president's would have been invitation to go to the White House, but they don't want anything to do with them.
Well, I just hate that soccer has become partisan in this moment, because I grew up playing, and I just think it's incredible that we have these women that are pure athletes, more than anything else. Forget their political activism or what they're out there saying now that they've won a world title. This is about them using their platform for good. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of them speaking out and voicing their concerns about who's in the White House or who's in Congress or any of that. But I do think we should talk about what Megan Rapinoe talked about, and she's the breakout star, obviously. She talked about the economics. She's like, if you support our team, buy our tickets, buy our merchandise, all of that. She understands that that's what it's going to take to build the women's team up even more so than they are already.
Absolutely.
That's what we should be talking about.
Absolutely, and it's not the government's role. And again, as a conservative, that's what we always say. It is the problem and the issue of the business model. I looked at New York Times, actually, when they want to do good journalism, they do. 2016 article about the bias of pay. Actually, as of 2016, the revenues of women's soccer actually exceeded that of men. We now profit more than men do. But there are also a lot of, idiosyncrasies in the sports world and also with FIFA. It's very complicated.
Yeah, I understand. For example, once every however many years the World Cup is played, there's a huge amount of publicity and viewing of women, but the rest of the time, globally, the viewership is way more of men playing.
And we talk about, being able to play. I was a former athlete as well. I played lacrosse. Lacrosse obviously is not on a global scale, but we here in the United States, again, thank goodness for Title IX, we're able to play. There's so many girls and women around the world who cannot even play. A lot of the Latin countries are very misogynistic and won't allow their young girls to play particularly football, soccer. So I just want to commend them all for representing what we as this country have fought for. Is there an issue with economics? Absolutely, but it's definitely something that U.S. soccer has an opportunity to elevate.
Look, I think you're making you're sugarcoating this in a way, because there is there's no silver bullet to pay equity. If there were, we'd have solved it a long time ago. You know, the three components everybody always says: the private sector has to do better, has to care more, and engage more with their own numbers and data. But the public sector has a role to play. And that role is this: that these team owners, these companies, you know, they get government benefits. They get tax benefits, they get support, they get, state and government-funded universities supporting their players and serving as recruitment opportunities. I mean, there is a lot of benefit that the public gives to these team owners. And so the idea that there's no public payback, that there's no government role to say, you know what, you have to pay women equally, to me makes no sense. Of course we should hold their foot to the fire.
So nothing short of an ERA will
We
solve this
absolutely
problem?
should be requiring pay equity from federal legislation for
What
all
about the
sports,
line that
for government and
the bill
for,
that Obama signed?
Which one?
The one named after the woman who was in the auto industry, I think, in the South.
Lily Ledbetter.
The Lily Ledbetter Act. That
and
didn't do it.
was a fair pay.
What it was a data collection. And what we've seen from the data is that there's not enough equity. And what we see now with women's soccer is that these companies that are sponsoring, the networks that are getting record ratings, they are all profiting. And they're profiting more because they're paying the women less. And that is not okay.
Yeah.
So will we ever get, while the Republicans control one chamber of Congress or the other, or the White House, will we ever get a Fair Pay Act?
Not without a change in the present legislation. These are teams. This is not the workplace that you and I are used to, and competitive sports is very different. The women's sports have a real difficulty here. It has to do with private business and with the revenue, given the way it is charted, that the men bring in versus the women. This is a function, though, of women's sports, period.
But women's soccer is bringing in more money than men's
but
soccer
not in the
US.
long run with advertisements, and that is the issue
In the
here.
U.S. it is.
No. Advertisements is where,
Separate from audience.
yeah, which is how this big bucks adds up for the men. And that is very hard in a market economy to just undo. That is why the remedy being sought here is not just in the courts, but in the Senate already, and I hope there is a comparable bill. If not, I will introduce it myself. In the House, is being introduced in the Congress to see if legislatively we can do something about this, because it is difficult. It's not like you and me in your grandmother's workplace.
Okay,
The
now
US
as soon
government-
as you go back to work, please look up and see if there's that bill.
Yeah, the
or
U.S.
not.
government subsidizes U.S. soccer, and Joe Manchin introduced a bill that says until you pay the teams equally, you won't get U.S. government subsidies anymore.
All right, interesting. From equal pay to Democratic divides.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to keep the infighting between members of the Democratic caucus behind closed doors, responding to a tweet by freshman Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff that compared centrist Democrats to segregationists. Pelosi reportedly told her caucus if there's a problem, members should come to her and not take to Twitter. Ocasio-Cortez has complained that Pelosi is singling out newly elected women of color, including herself, Ilhan Omar of Minneapolis, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts.
So, Hillary, as I see it, it's Miss B and on this side, the speaker, and the romper rumors on the other side, and no loyal partisan ever has her chief of staff tweet something like calling other Democrats segregationists. And this kind of behavior, I mean, what should the speaker be doing about it?
Yeah, I think that tweet in particular went too far, but I will say, first of all, I don't think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez suggested that there was racism associated with the speaker's actions. What she said was, we are 4 women of color, and we feel vulnerable. And I think that what they are experiencing is they've been elected as part of a new and energetic Democratic Party, motivated in part because of the right-wing craziness of the Trump administration, and they want to have a voice. And I do think that, look, I've known Nancy Pelosi, I can't wait to hear what Eleanor says about this. I've known Nancy Pelosi for 35 years. She was the AOC of her time. She has always been a progressive Democrat seeking change, looking for
I
opportunity.
covered her in the 80s. She's never, though, she played by the party rules. She never insulted her leader.
I don't think she's insulting her leader. I think they're asking for respect.
No, she's insulting. She's insulting me. She's insulting the Democratic Party when she plays the race card. And whenever somebody plays the race card, that means they have no retort. So they pull race out. Democrats don't usually do that, particularly against Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco, who helped us get the House back and who is trying to protect 40 new members who came from Trump districts. So she's trying to protect these moderate members so that we keep the House. And these, I have nothing, I think these spuncious young women, you notice that they're talking about being a minority of 4 in voting against the bill that everybody else voted for. I'd say all power to them. But just respond in kind. Don't respond in race, not within our caucus. So what has happened? The entire Black caucus now is up in arms, not against the 4. It was Ocasio-Cortez who put the race card into this, and some of them are trying to back off of that. And so now you've got the 53-person Black caucus saying, oh, no, you don't. We don't need that kind of racial discord within our party.
Well,
Is this every Republican's dream?
No, that's one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party in 2014-15. To blame it on Trump is, again, short-sighted. The first Democrat meeting I went to was 2007 when Hillary's and Barack's delegates were split. Remember that? The split of the party has been, even probably before that, but that was my first experience. So I think this is the Democratic Party's, pushing down young leaders. Actually, Cortez was born in 1989. I was 9. You were elected to Congress the year after. So to say that there's not a generation...
So what is that?
I'm saying that as a former Democrat, it was extremely, extremely hard to wait your turn. The bench is ridiculously long. And it's also an example of the fact that these young newcomers had no really relationship to partisan politics. And if anything, they went straight left. I returned back to the Republican Party because we knew that the Democratic Party as it stood, whether it's for the last 10 years, 14 years, 30 years, 40 years, had no future for people like us.
You have been in your resume a campaign strategist. I went and looked up Ocasio-Cortez's popularity in her home district. According to a New York poll, in March she had more high favorables, like 60-something versus 60 to 40-something. In May, after she kicked Amazon out of part of her district, her district turned against her.
Oh, yeah.
To me, she just seems like a screamer.
I mean, Joe probably did the work.
To do this against her own party, is she going to last more than one term?
Well, I find it hard to see her lasting. I enjoy her appeal. I think it's cool for young women to have such broad appeal. Someone like her who's just energized, that energy I relate to. I think, number one, what she needs to do is fire her chief of staff. He's too much of a rebel rouser. Every time she's in trouble, it's because of him. He's bad on advice. And
what, did he tell her to get rid of Amazon?
She just has bad advice across the board. This is, again, one of those scenarios.
He's the race issue.
Well, the race issue, look, I'm somebody that has been accused of not realizing the color of my own skin and stuff like that. But I don't think Nancy Pelosi, in her heart of hearts, wants to make a race thing with this squad, because she is...
So what's the best way? I mean, we all understand politics is politics and votes are votes. So you don't want to turn off any of the hard left
The best thing for Nancy Pelosi to do is to tell her friends who are more mature, chill, they're young, They're anxious to make a mark and spend some private time with these
I wish
women.
she had done that
And
instead
that
of
is the
saying what
best
she
thing
said
for
at the
her to
caucus.
do.
I think that would have been best.
Because really what, they have the enthusiasm of youth in this party. They have energized a significant amount of people.
And we're out of time. I'm sorry.
Leaders would do
That's
well
it
to
for
embrace
this-
it.
That's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week. But my question is, can fire? I mean,
The standards. That would be a big signal.
I mean, this one is such a, is so trying to make a name for herself. I mean, to me, all she cares about is her. And the only reason.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the Cornell Douglas Foundation, committed to encouraging stewardship of the environment, land conservation, watershed protection, and eliminating harmful chemicals. Additional funding provided by the Wallace Genetic Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/to the contrary.